oh, it's made up. And I'm like, no, it's not made up. If anything, we toned it down because we knew it was so unbelievable. So.
Hi everyone, welcome back to After Broadway, the podcast where we deep dive into anything and everything musical theater. I'm Tara.
I'm Stefania, and in today's episode, we're joined by Irene Sankoff, one half of the team, along with her husband, David Hine, behind the 7-time Tony-nominated smash hit musical, Come From Away.
Now, before this current run in Toronto, there have been 855 performances of Come From Away here, and we're gearing up for countless more.
We had such a great time chatting all about Canada's musical, and you'll hear us tell her, but this is one of our favorite shows, so we're so excited to have it back in our hometown.
So without further ado, here's our conversation with Irene. We're so excited to talk about Come From Away. As we said off the mic, we are such big fans of the show, so it's really cool to be able to chat with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. It's exciting.
So we always start our interviews by asking our guests what their first memory of theater is. So what's your first memory?
My first memory of theater is going to see Guys and Dolls at a high school down the street from my house. I don't know why my mom decided to take me to that, but somehow I just totally fell in love with it. And I think it must have been a pretty good production. Like, I still kind of remember watching the dance. I think they had like some really, trained dancers in it for some reason. And the leads were just great. And then I was like, oh my God, can we see it again? And we went back the next day and saw it again. And then the obsession was born.
Is Guys and Dolls still a favorite, or was it that production that?
I just saw the immersive Guys and Dolls in London.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Just like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. It's one of my favorites. It's still up there. It's one of those that's kind of hard to ruin. Like, not that, like, I mean, like, seriously, the production was amazing in London, like, and just so smart and so quick. And, but like, like you can see it at a high school and it's still fun. It's still funny as long as people commit to it, the ridiculousness of it.
I was going to ask, you said you went back the next day. Is this like common for you? Do you always see shows like multiple times? We are like 2 show, always like 3-peat, 4-peat, 5-peat. Like we always return back. So is that the same for you?
100%. If I like something, I go back more than once.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Not everyone does that. Not everyone
wants
to see things more than once,
It's easy to me. Like the first time you just experience it, but then like the second time you start to like be like, okay, how does this work? Why, why is this working, and what's it doing for me? And what can I learn from it?
Speaking of, we're so excited for Come From Away to make its return to Toronto. We've both seen it multiple times. This will be our 3rd time seeing it for both of us. And one of those times includes the very first performance back in 2021 with the run that was cut short by Omicron. So we're absolutely huge fans. Come From Away has had an amazing relationship with Toronto, from the pre-Broadway run back in 2016 to the first Canadian run in 2018. What does it mean to get to bring it back again?
Oh my God. When they said to us, like when it closed, it was just heartbreaking. We had such dreams for the show to be in Canada and to run a long time, and then that got shut down. It was heartbreaking. People thought they were coming back. People had gotten apartments. People had quit other jobs. And it was rough. It was really, really rough. Yeah.
I mean, we were chatting just before this, but as I'll say it again for the episode here, like being in that theater for the first time, even though it was like smaller capacity and it only ran for only those like 7 or 8 performances, it did feel like electric to be back in there. So to actually have Come From Away come back to do almost an extended run here back in Toronto, I feel like is really exciting for the city as well. But we are interested, like, had you known about the story in Gander before like signing up for this project?
No. So David and I lived in uptown Manhattan over 9/11, and we were focused, as most people in the cities that were affected were, just focused on what was happening here. The somewhat unique thing was that we happened to live in a residence called International House, which had students from 110 different countries. So people had all sorts of reactions. Like there were kids who were there as refugees, there were kids who were American kids, they were adults. But I mean, it was so long ago, it feels like they were kids. And I guess we were really, and there are people whose parents or grandparents, because there are people who worked at International House too, had survived the Holocaust. So they all had differing views, but like we all came together to check in on each other, to take care of each other. By the end of the night, someone had pulled out a piano and we were drinking wine and we were just all trying to just get through whatever was coming because we had no idea. And occasionally somebody would say, Canada took planes, thank you. And I'd be like, I'm Canadian, but like, I don't know anything about that. You're welcome. I don't know. So when the idea came to us years later, I kind of thought like, we kind of know what this was like, except for, actually in New York. And I hadn't thought about it in a long time because, you don't think about that stuff.
Yeah.
And then we went out on the 10th anniversary to do the interviews. It was like, oh my God, like this is the most incredible story. And we were just hooked. And I think because we had been in New York over 9/11, I think we definitely knew the sensitivity that we had to approach the story with. I still never thought it would be done in Manhattan or in America anywhere. Like I was like, no, this will be done by Canadian high schools and that'll be great. So, I'm surprised every single day.
I had the same thought when I saw it for the first time. I was like, there are some niche Canadian jokes in here. Like, will this work in the States? And like, does it work in the States?
The evidence is there, but go on.
No, I know, but it's just like, do you find that the same laughs happen for like certain, like I'm thinking Rogers TV as an ex-Rogers TV employee, like that was something that really stuck out to me. Shoppers Drug Mart. But then we've talked to people and they're like, well, Shoppers is like CVS and like there's a million local news stations in America. But I'm just curious if like those kind of jokes hit the same way there that they do here.
Or anything like so specific to Canada and to Gander even.
Largely they do, like, because we see stories about like places in Ireland or Scotland or Australia. And, so theater going people generally have the wherewithal to be like, okay, this is just a different place somewhere. Watching things like the barbecue scene in LA was just unhinged because LA is and everyone there is like, no way. Like almost tore the theater apart as they were watching that because it was just so foreign to them. I mean, and that's the big thing is a lot of kids are like, oh, it's made up. And I'm like, no, it's not made up. If anything, we toned it down because we knew it was so unbelievable. So that's the big difference, I think. Yeah.
We always talk about when we hear a movie or a book or a story is being adapted into a musical, we say like, do we think this movie sings or does this story sing? Yeah. What about Come From Away like sang out to you that it needed to be a musical?
Okay, honestly, when we first went out there, started doing the interviews, I was kind of thinking of something like more like Laramie. Like we were sent there to write a musical, but I was like, I don't know how that works. Like, I don't know how we pick one of these stories to be like the main character and then like, go through all of the steps that you're supposed to go through to write a piece of musical theater. And David said, just wait until you hear the band. Like, just wait until you hear, what the music sounds like here in Newfoundland. And then as soon as the band started playing, I was like, oh my God, you're right. It has to be a musical because the Newfoundland music is just, you can't tell a story about Newfoundland without music. And because we never thought it would be done in America, we were kind of freed from all of those like musical theater writing rules. We were like, let's just tell the story the way that we think it should be told. And let's use the music to move us from one scene to another. Let's not have an I Want song 3 songs in. Let's not have an 11 o'clock number. Like, let's just tell the story the way we think it should be told and in the way that honors the stories and what happened. And And that's what we did. And that's, yeah. Now I've forgotten the question because I'm just like, blah, blah, blah.
No, well, it's interesting because I was going to say, like, we've talked about this before. It's like a sung through musical to us. And it's like, sometimes when you have these sung through musicals, it's hard to pick out those specific songs. So hearing you say that, like, there isn't an I Want song, 3 songs in, like, I understand that from listening to the cast recording and seeing the show on stage. However, like, obviously Me in the Sky is such a standout number. Like, we love all of the motifs that are used, like, throughout the show. So speaking of the motif, you know, it's the, like, you are here, it's the I am an islander. Like, how did those, like, come to you? Like, with the process of this musical, like, what came first? Was it the story, the songs, the music, the lyrics? Like, how did you craft that together?
It kind of came at the same time. Like, I think we just kept asking ourselves, like, does it sing? Like,
right.
For instance, with Bonnie, we were like, she can't sing to the animals. She just can't. Like, it sound like a Disney princess. Like, I don't know how, maybe you can do it. You know, I did not know how to do it without making her into a Disney princess. Like,
it's a different musical.
Different musical, 100%. Bonnie singing to the animals. Yeah. And then something like, you know, having Nick and Diane tell us, like actually, Nick actually said to us, you know, I want to, you know, it's like, I wanted to just stop the world. And it was like, oh, that's a song. That's cool for a song. And then Diane said to us, you know, it felt like we were at a costume party. And it was like, oh, okay. Well, that song nearly got cut so many times. And it's so many different verses, and we just beat that thing until we could figure it out, because it was it was rough.
That's something we wanted to ask. You know, you met with so many of the real life people from Gander and those who were stranded there after the planes were grounded. Is there a story that you heard that you tried really hard to fit into the musical but just couldn't quite make it work and didn't make the final cut?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's parts of stories. There's stories. We actually have a whole Cut From Away concert, which is like an hour of material that was cut. But one of the stories was, you know, it was about this guy in St. John's who owns a menswear store, and he gets a call because there's somebody in Gander, and it was like the head of Hugo Boss, and he brought out like clothes and like a big thing of food and wine and stuff. And apparently his name was Werner Baldessarini, the head of Hugo Boss at the time. And apparently he just said to him, like, I can't take this in here. Like, we're being treated terrifically in here. Like, this is a slap in the face. This is an insult. Like, go give it to your customers on the Customer Appreciation Day. Like, you know, I'll take the underwear, but, you know, that's, other than that, I don't need anything. And apparently they're also like kept offering to send this guy like a jet, his own private jet, to get him out of there. And he was like, no, I came in on that jumbo with those people, and I'm on that. And I'm like, looking and listening to the story, it's so incredible, but we just could not weave it in. We just could not.
That's funny. What a character.
Yeah. Oh, it's such like, it's its own little standalone thing. Actually, it's its own little like. Yeah. It's like
own a mini series, a spin-off, you know, like their own spin-off.
Yeah.
To go back to those motifs for a second, how did you decide where they show up, like, throughout the musical, so that it actually has such a high impact? Because I left the theater the first time singing, like, I'm an islander, I am an islander. And like, You Are Here is something that is like constantly in my head all the time. So I'm like, how do you have this, you know that this works, but like, how do you place it properly in the script to be like, this is what people will leave humming when they leave the theater?
Oh my God, trial and error. Like, just, you know, it was probably in there a lot more. It was probably in there in different spots and got moved around. Like, just, you know, there's a little bit of instinct. There's a little bit of, you know, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I mean, one thing that happened was at one point we needed exit music for people to leave the theater to, but no one left the theater. They all just stood up and started clapping along, and they wouldn't leave. So all of a sudden, then we had to like bring the band out on stage and have like choreography for them, because suddenly it became its own number its own right, and there was no exit music. And so like really, really trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
We knew it was going to be an Islander was going to be a big thing because of the there's a song called The Islander, and the Navigators do it, and Shani Ganuk do it. I'm not sure which, I can't remember which of those two bands is actually responsible for writing it, but they've both done amazing like versions of it. So we knew there was going to be a lot of I Am an Islander, and the whole You Are Here thing. Yeah, it just grew. It just grew on itself. You know, the marketing department picked it up, and then it just yeah.
The radio ads.
It's on the radio.
Always
yeah.
It's good though. It's great.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. A few years ago, I listened to you and David on a podcast where you mentioned that you'd seen Once and Peter and the Starcatcher kind of in the process of starting to write this musical. So kind of jumping off from that, like what are your musical inspirations for this show, and what else did you draw from when crafting Come From Away?
So definitely Once. Peter and the Starcatcher wasn't a musical, but we loved the way they used direct dress, and they turned into when they just start a scene together, and then
it's like 12 actors playing every character, doing every part.
Yeah. Exactly. I wanted more women than just the one.
Yes, well, I remember that so vividly because I saw it on Broadway when it ran and like loved it. So,
right? Yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
Oh no, me too. Actually, our daughter's name is Molly, and it's largely because of Molly and Peter and the Starcatcher. There's a lot of Into the Woods because it's a group musical, group storytelling. There's definitely a chorus line, like just because interviews and turning interviews into songs. In fact, I did not realize how much a chorus line influenced us until like I was sitting in the theater seeing it in Stratford a few years back, and I was like, oh yeah, no, that's in my DNA. I watched that movie, the movie, so many times on my VCR, and it's just, that's, I think, instinctively how I knew like a story could be told that way. What else? Those are the big ones we always talk about that influenced. Although in the beginning there's the song Blankets and Bedding where the women are all phoning each other. That's Bye Bye Birdie. That's the telephone.
That's true. That's so true.
Yeah.
Telephone hour. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about those things. And then I guess like another thing that, I mean, we love a one-act musical. It's something that I feel like more shows should do more often these days. And I feel like, I will ask you the question, but I feel like I know the answer already, of having an act break would break the momentum of the show. So I'm assuming that's why there isn't an act break. But in any of the iterations that you were working on, was there a conversation about like, should we have an intermission in the show?
Yeah, so when we did the show at Goodspeed with students in 2013, early 2013, and then again at Sheridan in March or April 2013, those were 2-act versions. And it just like shrank and shrank and shrank and shrank. Like we just cut and cut and cut. And yeah, the producers and the director felt very strongly about, we just go. Like we just hit the ground running and we don't stop. Again,
where is the act break if there is an act break?
Okay, guess. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my god, I don't know.
I gotta pull up my song list.
I gotta look at this. Yeah, exactly. I was like, the screech feels too late, but would it be around the screech?
Yeah, it was after Screech.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, he knew it was after Screech, and then you came back.
Had that high energy.
Yeah. Well, because I feel like after then it's kind of where it takes more emotional turn. So yes, but then Act 2 would be quite sad, I feel, if it was 2 acts.
Yeah, we spent a lot. Like Kevin had his own song about Pay It Forward. Claude had a song about Washington. Bob had a song about his dad. Like, I mean, like it just kind of focused in on a lot of characters a little bit more. And it just, you could kind of just go on forever, like just telling stories. And we're kind of like, we have to shape this. Like we're just, and then it felt like it ended like 5 times. So it just got shaped and the act break.
Sounds like it had more solos and like featured moments, whereas now it's very much ensemble and like very few moments where like one person gets to stand out and kind of take center stage.
And those are the people who were alone, like Beverly Bass separated herself from everyone. She stayed in her hotel room. Hannah, for the most part, just stayed like waiting for the phone while everyone else did their own thing. So those two people really seem to be the ones that deserved a chance to have their say, because they weren't in the group scenes, talking to each other. And she's got Beulah. Oh, Beulah had a song. In the second. No, I was maybe in the first act. Anyway. Yeah.
I was as you're saying these people's names, I was going to be like, do you have a favorite character? But these are real people. So like, that's a weird question.
Who's your favorite person?
I love them all equally. Even if they're amalgamations and have different names and
I mean, well, speaking of these real people and also characters, you were just in the Ottawa production of Come From Away. What was it like to kind of like switch hats and like actually be on stage in front of the audience?
It was fabulous. It was it really is a train, and you don't get off. Like, you just have to like go in and then just be like right in the moment and going like from spot to spot, and just can't let your mind wander. And it was brilliant. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. It was scary, but I was so well taken care of by the rest of the cast, who had done the show over 800 times each or something, like, and they just completely had my back, and I just worked my ass off to be able to do it, because it was just something that I really wanted to experience, and it was totally worth it. It was so much fun. Yeah.
Do you see more performing in your future? You've kind of like dipped your toe back in.
I would love to, but I don't know. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. So, as much as I would like to say like, yeah, absolutely, it's like, I don't know. I just don't know.
Right.
Put myself out there, but who knows?
Do you have a favorite song in the show?
Oh God, still like choosing between my children.
I know. I'm sorry.
To be honest, actually, it changes. And especially when I was seeing it a lot, like when I was seeing it in different places a lot and going to attend it a lot, then it would change depending on what was going on, like in the world and in my life. So it would fluctuate.
But currently,
when you're performing it, let's say when you were in the show, what was one that you were excited to like hit every night? Or
I loved doing Something's Missing, because I used to be a dancer, and that like a long time ago, and that was as close to like, and I was like sitting down for almost the entire number, but that's as close as I get to like being able to perform as a dancer anymore. So I don't know, it's just really fun. I just like really like thinking about things coming from my core and like rippling out and stuff like that, and it was good. I think that was my favorite to perform. Of course, I loved like the like getting to be Bonnie as well. Like that was just totally wild. Like that was just.
You could have had your Disney princess singing to the animals moment.
I think part of the reason I couldn't do it is I kept being like, okay, if I had to do this, I would just feel so eggy. I would just be like, so yeah, no, just talking.
We have to ask you about the worldwide success of Come From Away. I feel like we talked about this a bit earlier. As I said, some of these like very niche Canadian things, like I didn't know if they would work worldwide. There are so many productions of Come From Away that have been running. Did you ever think that this like little Canadian show would have a life like this?
No way. I'm constantly surprised. It's like, Buenos Aires? Wow, okay. Sweden? All right. We saw it in Japan. That was wild.
Wow.
Yeah, they had to talk because
can I ask, so is it translated in a lot of these places, or are they mostly doing the English production, or they're translating it?
No, it's translated. It's the same choreography in Japan. Amsterdam did their own version. It was a license, not a replica production. Buenos Aires is also a license. It's translated, but it's like, but it's their own staging. It's their own music. not their own music, their own like choreography and stuff. Sweden was also a license. I can't remember where else. Oh, David and Molly went to. Yeah. It was in Korea.
Where did they see it? And then in Korea. Oh wow.
Yeah, they just went for the weekend and I can't roll.
You're like, I can't fly that long for one weekend. What I was going to ask is, do you have any say or input into the translations in translating your lyrics, your words?
We do. They send it to us, and then they send a back translation, and we usually say like, actually, I'm not sure if this is right, and then they're like, no, this is what you mean. This is what it is. And we're like, okay,
cool, okay. Got it. Thank you.
But it's like a real art. Oh my God, when they did it in Dutch, and they were, instead of Stop the World, they did Stop the Tide. I was like, that's beautiful. I love
it. Well, I watched yesterday a little clip from the Spain production, and they're singing in Spanish. And then I was like, because we were talking about obviously like with the niche Canadian like expressions and obviously the Newfie accent, like how do you do that? Like how can you portray a Newfoundlander when you're speaking Spanish? Like it's just such an interesting concept to me.
Yeah, they did. I think they did Spain Spanish, and then they did Mexican Spanish. And then they did something. So they figure it out. They figure out as close as they can to like a mainland big city accent, and then like a out in the country accent, and then something else for like people who just came from everywhere else.
Yeah, so amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Newfie expression?
Oh my God, I Lard, Tender, and Jesus, and frankly, Sweet Jesus in the Garden made its way in. I love that. What else? God Bless Your Cotton Socks is fun.
I mean, you had to put on the accent when you were doing it in opera. Like, did you get any pointers from like your castmates who've been doing it for, as you said, 800 performances?
Oh, totally. And they would like still be talking in the accent during breaks. Like, so I got to kind of like let it sink in. But yeah, it's a hard accent to do. Like once you do it, it's kind of in there. But yeah, that person was like, whoa, okay, yeah.
We're almost done, and this is kind of a hard question to ask you, but we're gonna ask it anyway. What do you think keeps people coming back to Come From Away over and over again?
I think because it's all based on true stories and like true people, like everything actually happened. Like even like the Annette's fantasies, not to give anything away, but Annette's a little boy crazy and she has some fantasies, and like that came from talking to somebody and them just being like, and listen, this is what happened next. Like you couldn't believe it. And I think you were so used to seeing things that are like atrociously awful and hearing terrible news, but like to see and hear things that are like uniquely brave and like unbelievably good, like, surprisingly kind. It takes us completely off guard. Like we just don't even know what to make of it. I think as Canadians, it makes us really proud. Whenever there's a Canadian like in an audience, like, somewhere in the US or something, like they just are sobbing. They're just like, oh, this is so cool. I don't think we're used to seeing ourselves on stage or in mainstream media. So I think that's also a big thing. I don't know. And there's so much 6 degrees of separation. Like wherever we go, we always find somebody who either was stranded somewhere on September 11th, like out in the Maritime Provinces or even out in Vancouver. I haven't met anyone who was stranded in Toronto. Well, actually, anyone at the film festival stranded in Toronto. But I think we're also still at that time where it's so resonant. Like we all just kind of were there and knew what happened. But at the same time, kids who weren't born yet love the show. Like 16-year-olds and 11-year-olds, and I'm. Well, what's that about? I don't know.
I mean, I have to say, like, we're obviously always recommending Come From Away, but anybody that I've talked to that's seen it is also recommending it to all of their friends, all of their family. I think it's exactly what you're saying. Like, it's a really human story, and it takes, like, these days we're used to bells and whistles, and this kind of like takes everything and like is a subtle way of showing like what life can be like and was like. And I think that's what people are drawn to. Also, like the score is fantastic, so that really adds to it as well. But I have yet to see a person or meet a person that hasn't told like 10 people to go see Come From Away. Like it is the people's musical as far as I'm concerned.
That's awesome. Thank you.
No, we're so excited it's back. I was telling Tara before, we've seen it a couple times, but my dad, who's from the East Coast, he hasn't seen it yet. So we're gonna make sure to get him to Come From Away this time, because he's watched the documentary on HBO so many times and loves it so much. So this run, finally, we're getting Dad, who's from not Gander, but nearby-ish, to the musical this time. So we're really excited.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah. Oh my God. Probably knows part of the cast.
Maybe.
Somebody who's in the cast.
Before we really go.
Yeah, go Steph.
Can you... Anything you want to plug for us? Where can we find you? Where can we follow you? Anything you have coming up?
Nothing I can really talk about yet, but hopefully soon.
Secret.
Just,
You're in Gypsy the musical on Broadway.
Wow. Yeah. No, sadly, but hopefully something soon. Otherwise, Instagram is usually where I am.
And thank you so much, Irene, for joining us today. It truly was a pleasure talking to you. And we cannot wait to see this show again.
Well, if you see me there, say hi. I don't know if you're coming to opening, but say hi.
We'll be there.
We'll be at opening.
If we see you, we'll come and say hi.
Perfect. Also, take care.
It was so great to chat with Irene all about Come From Away. So thank you again for joining us on the podcast. And you can listen to any of our other episodes, including our full Come From Away episode, by subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a comment.
And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Off2BOA Podcast with the number 2, and on TikTok at Off2Broadway, also with a number 2.
And as we said in the episode, Come From Away is currently in Toronto at the Royal Alexandra Theatre until March 2nd for now, but we expect it to extend maybe a little longer. So keep updated with us for those details. But we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.